Okay, greetings everyone. Welcome to the Gusmer webinar, Crossflow Filtration and Winemaking. My name is Dave Gusmer. I'm Executive Vice President and one of the owners of Gusmer Enterprises. I oversee our beverage sales team currently. Prior to this role, I was the product manager for Bucher Vaslin, covering our Crossflow line. So I'm quite familiar with Crossflow filtration and the Bucher line specifically. So we really appreciate you taking the time to join this webinar. These are strange times indeed. And I know you have a lot of choices for attending different webinars. So thank you for participating in this one. So we have a good program planned for you today. So let's have some fun and let's talk Crossflow. So what are we going to talk about today? I'm going to give you a general Crossflow 101 over filtration on Crossflow filtration. Talking about just the general why is Crossflow of interest and how does it work. I'll talk about some of the reasons why it is so popular and why are so many winemakers moving to Crossflow filtration. And I'll then talk about some of the specifics on what makes the Bucher system so unique. What is specific about the Bucher Vaslin system that makes us so popular? At the end of the session, I'm going to invite Chris Bertsche. Chris Bertsche is the winemaker for Coelho Winery up in Oregon. He's going to share his experience. He has an FX6 filter, and he will chime in with some comments and commentary on his experience. At the end, I'm going to review, and Chris and I are going to review any of your questions. And I've invited Benoit Marat from Bucher Vaslin North America. He's going to be on the call as well. So any questions that myself, Calvin Watkins, our Gusmer product manager for Bucher, or Chris cannot answer, Benoit's going to chime in and assist with that as well. So let's talk, what is Crossflow filtration? Crossflow is defined as TFF, tangential flow filtration. The written definition, it's a method of clarification where the product flow is parallel to the filter surface. That's the key word, that it's parallel. That's the written definition. This next slide, this is a great slide that defines Crossflow in a nutshell. Look at the top graphic. The top one's called dead-end filtration. If you're using filter sheets, you're using diatomaceous earth, you're using a bag filter, cartridge filter, all of those filters are really considered dead-end filtration. The reason it's called dead-end is that we're moving the filter, the product that you're filtering is going against your filter element at a 90-degree angle. So you're not flowing across it, you're going against it. So what's happening is we're building up a cake of contaminants here. This is the unfiltered side. Clean wine is coming out of your filter sheet or your DE. This is filtered wine. The clarity is actually going to increase over time because this is getting tighter as we're building up the cake. With Crossflow, we're not going against the filter element. Crossflow, we're flowing it across. So what we're doing is we're not building up a cake. We're keeping all of these contaminants in suspension so that you're getting better flow rates and it's not plugging up. So a couple of terms I want to clarify here, and these are interchangeable terms. When we're talking Crossflow, unfiltered wine is often referred to as retentate. So that's going to have the wine, the solids that we're removing. The filtered wine, the clean wine, is also called permeate. So if I use these terms, or Benoit or Chris uses these terms, retentate and unfiltered is the same. Permeate and filtered wine, same thing. This is a shot of an old Bucher FM40. So this is one of their older Crossflow filters, but I like this photograph a lot. This gives you a very simple depiction on how this works. So this is a 4-module system. These 4 modules here. Wine is flowing from the top down. And what we have going here is a continuous loop, a closed loop. We're flowing the wine through the centrifugal pump here, and we're flowing it from the top down. The only place for that wine to go is to either stay in the loop or to go through our membranes, which I'll show you in a second. For this next slide, we took one of the modules, took one of these 4 modules off the system. You're looking at it from the top down. What you see here are about 2,200 capillary straws. These are our membranes. This is the actual membrane material. This potting that you see here is a resin. This resin is in between each of these straws. So the only way water or wine or any liquid is going to get into that module is if it goes through the top of this capillary straw. So you're not going to get any bypass. You can kind of see the resin in between these straws. So you will not get any bypass. So taking that module off the machine, and if you're looking at it, here's their unfiltered wine, the retentate. Here is our filtered wine. So retentate is going through the straws. The filtrate, the permeate, is coming out of the straws. Only the part of the liquid is crossing the membrane at any given time. So the retentate is going to be those coarse components that are unable to travel through the membrane material. The only thing that's going to travel in through those capillary straws is going to be filtered wine or your permeate. So what that means is theoretically, during the course of the filtration, that retentate is getting more concentrated as we go through the filtration. So theoretically, at the very end of the filtration, what you should be left with is clean, brilliant wine that passed through these capillary straws and very high solids, low liquid retentate that's going to remain in the machine. So hopefully that makes sense. Let's talk about what are we trying to remove? What are these particles that are in the wine? You have your grape solids, tartrates, finding agents. They're about 100 to 1,000 microns in size. You have your colloidal or precipitated proteins. They're about 0.2 to 5. Then you have your yeast and bacteria, 0.65 to 3 microns. Bacteria, as you know, is going to be at that 0.65 micron level. Yeast is slightly larger, closer to 3. Why is that important? With Crossflow, we're at this magic number of 0.2 microns. That's the key. We're going to remove yeast. We're going to remove bacteria. We are not tighter than 0.2. That would go into RO, reverse osmosis, nanofiltration, or ultrafiltration. We are only going to remove 0.2 and larger. And as a result, we're going to leave these good components in the wine. So the dissolved salts, organic molecules, the proteins, the good stuff that you're trying to keep in your wine stays in the wine. So why is Crossflow popular? The number one advantage is it's one-pass filtration. If you're using DE, if you're using filter sheets, you're using the bag filters, think of how many times you need to set up those filters. You may have a coarse, polished, sterile filter sheet. You may even have a fourth one. And with Crossflow, you're only moving it one time. You've gone from 3 steps to 1. And why that's important is that we're only moving the wine one time. So as a result, there's less oxidation. And if there's less oxidation, you're getting better wine quality. So because you're only moving it once, less of an opportunity to damage your wine. Better flavor, better aromas. Think of the wine losses. If you're using 3 or 4 steps, every time you move that wine, you're losing some of that wine. With Crossflow, you're only moving it once. One of the top advantages of Crossflow is the reduction in wine loss. Color losses are minimized. When you use filter sheets or DE, think of the color loss that you have. That cellulose is absorbing the color in your wine. You're not going to find that with Crossflow. We maintain your color in addition to the quality. Think of the time and the labor savings. Think of how long it takes for you to load a filter press. Think of if you have a DE filter, you need somebody to be monitoring that filter through the course of the filtration. With Crossflow, you have one operator. He or she is hooking up a couple of hoses. You press a couple of buttons and you're good to go. Huge amount of savings in terms of labor. This is an interesting benefit. You still need to use a cartridge filter on your bottling line, even with Crossflow. The reason for that is we can't do the integrity test, the bubble point test, on the Crossflow membranes like we can on a cartridge. However, we have found that the life of those cartridges on your bottling line is significantly improved because the wine that we're sending to it is much cleaner. So you get longer life, you're spending less money on membranes. Think of the savings with, you don't have to spend money on filter sheets or DE or any other consumable. You don't have the flavor issues with DE or sheets. If you're using a sheet filter, you need to do a rinse, normally with a citric rinse, to get rid of some of that pulpy flavor. No need to do that with Crossflow. You don't have the health issues that are associated with DE or sheets, particularly with DE. You still need to clean the filter, and most Crossflow suppliers, including Bucher, use caustic. Chlorinated caustic was originally what was used. Obviously, to prevent TCA, we have switched to non-chlorinated. In those cases, we're using hydrogen peroxide, which acts as your oxidizing agent. You can also use enzymes. That is an opportunity if you have really in-depth clogging. Enzymes can help improve some of that if you do a soaking with enzymes. Important point here is about your water. We have found that quite frequently what's plugging the filter is not dirty wine. It's your water on site. If you have very poor city water or very poor well water, you may need to get some water treatment prior to the filter to make sure that we're maintaining the cleanliness. This is an interesting little animation that I like to share. So here we have our polyphenolic compounds. This is the stuff we want to keep in the wine. During the course of cross-flow filtration, these polyphenolic compounds will go through the membrane, but what happens is they actually deform, they break apart. However, those compounds, those polyphenols will come back together. So the reason we mention this is that if you taste the wine immediately after a cross-flow demo, it might taste a little bit flat or beat up. The wine will come together. It's very similar to the phenomenon of bottle shock. I'm sure you've experienced this when you taste the wine right off the bottling line. It doesn't taste, it tastes a little bit maybe weak or just not as vibrant. The wine does come together. So just keep that in mind. We find that phenomenon is more common with cross-flow versus other methods of filtration. What makes the Bucher system unique? We've talked about cross-flow in general. What are the advantages of Bucher? The number one thing that Bucher has done is the membrane that they chose. Bucher went with a modified PES membrane that stands for polyether sulfone. It's an organic membrane. They chose this because of its ability to not bind with proteins and other components in wine. It had the best reaction with wine in terms of not affecting the flavor. So that's the number one feature. Bucher went with an asymmetric membrane. So what does that mean? It's a 0.2 micron in terms of the retention. Suppliers will have either an asymmetric or a symmetric membrane. An asymmetric means it's 0.2 here. The symmetric is also 0.2. The asymmetric means the pore structure actually opens up through the course of the capillary straw. With a symmetric membrane, that 0.2 is throughout the capillary straw. The advantage of having an asymmetric is two. You get a much more efficient backflush, which we'll talk about in a second. We can clean that capillary much more effectively because we have a stronger backflush than if it was a symmetric membrane. The other issue with a symmetric membrane, these contaminants can actually plug the pore size much more so than an asymmetric. So you see more in-depth clogging with a symmetric membrane than you would with an asymmetric. So less in-depth clogging with asymmetric, and we get this very efficient backflush. And the backflush is very critical, which I'll talk about in a second. This, in my opinion, is, I think, the best feature of Bucher. It operates at a very low pressure. The one knock on Crossflow is that it heats up or beats up the wine. Bucher was able to address that by making sure we operate at a very low pressure. The maximum is going to be 1.2 bar. We start off at about 600 millibar. The highest we would go is 1.2. So what that means is that we are gentle on the wine. We're protecting the wine quality better than anyone else in the market. The question would be, if it's at such a low pressure, how do we maintain the flow rate? The answer to that question is our backflush. So here we have our asymmetric membrane. We're doing a backflush and a reverse flow. So a backflush, we're taking clean wine and we're moving in a reverse direction to unclog what might be on the surface of the membrane. See how the flow rate drops if we didn't do any type of backflush? Pretty dramatically and pretty quickly. The Bucher system does a backflush. It's very quick. It's 1 to 2 seconds. So we shut off the inlet, we move into reverse flow, and then we go back on to filtering. We do this very frequently throughout the course of the filtration. The frequency of the backflush is dictated by the machine. So if it's a very clean wine, you may not see as many backflushes. If it's a dirtier wine, it could be more frequent. But this is a very slick design that we can maintain flow rate at a very low pressure because of this synergy with the backflush. Great design. The Bucher system is a 2-pump system. It's very simple. It's easy to maintain. Some of our competitors have multiple pumps. That just adds to the maintenance. All we have here is your feed pump is a positive displacement pump. This is your key pump right here. Your centrifugal pump is a constant speed that's running the wine through the capillaries. This feed pump, this is the guy that's going to either increase or decrease depending on how we're plugging. So that's the key pump. But very simple design, only 2. This is the other feature that really makes Bucher unique. The opening slide that I showed you that had the 2200 capillaries, that was this membrane here. This is our PES membrane. It's 0.2 micron. This is also the same PES membrane, 0.2 micron. The difference is that this is 1.5 millimeters in diameter. This one is 3 millimeters. So we use the same membrane, but the 3 millimeter for using higher solids like juice lees. So some winemakers have said, well, why don't you just use the juice lees membrane for your wine filtration? And theoretically you could, but what happens is we can fit twice as many of these capillary straws in a wine module compared to these juice lees capillaries. So that's why we use the 3 millimeter for juice lees. We use the 1.5 millimeter for wine filtration. So if this is an FX3 wine filter, so if you wanted to go with the juice lees, we would pop out these 3 modules. We would install them with these 3 modules, and each of them have the 3 millimeter capillary straws. There's a pre-filter here that you need for juice lees. This takes out the seeds, skins, the bigger products. And this manifold here keeps from plugging the top of the modules. It kind of keeps things in suspension. So very unique advantage to the Bucher system. Take a look at this photo. So this is your juice lees. So this is the tank bottoms. You're letting your white wines settle. You're removing the juice off that tank. We're only sending the tank bottom from that settling tank to the crossflow filter. This is the clarity of the juice. Look how clear and clean that is coming off the machine. This is your retentate at the very end. This is how thick the solids are of your juice lees. So very dramatic. Juice lees, clean filtered juice, retentate of the juice lees. So let's summarize some of the advantages of the Bucher system. Bucher has a PES membrane. They have a membrane that is going to be most compatible with your wine. It's not going to bind. It's not going to take out the positive components you're trying to leave in there. This is the #1 advantage. It operates at a very low pressure. We are not going to heat the wine like the competitors are going to do. We have this very unique backflush system that enables us to maintain the flow rate even though we're at such a low pressure. Another huge advantage is the automation. The Bucher system is extremely easy to operate. You just have to punch a couple of buttons, hook up the hoses, as I said, and you're good to go. Most of our customers actually do run their filter overnight, and then they do the cleaning during the day. Obviously, you might need a couple of weeks to be comfortable in order to do that, but most of our customers have gone that direction. The fact that we can process juice lees is a huge advantage. It's a huge advantage in terms of improving the quality of your program. You can still use that very high quality juice, and think of the wine loss reduction, the juice loss reduction. You're able to process product that previously you may have just had to throw away. The fact that it's a 2-pump design is very simple to operate, very easy to maintain. There's very little to maintain. Nice advantage here, and I know Chris will talk about this. The lowest water consumption on the market. When you need to clean the filter, we've looked at all the competitors. The Bucher system uses the least amount of water, including chemicals as well, because we're able to maintain the cleanliness during our normal operation. We do include a pre-filter on every machine. So there is a cartridge filter for your water. This is a water pre-filter. As I mentioned, if you have really bad quality water, you may need to get some water treatment done prior to getting the Crossflow. Bucher also offers a 3-stage manifold that you could get if need be. We can filter sparkling wines. So we need to know this ahead of time, but you can get your Crossflow outfitted for sparkling wine production. I'd like to spend just a couple of seconds talking about this comment here. Every Crossflow filter can filter easy wines. It's very easy to do Sauvignon Blanc. Where the Bucher system really shines is on those difficult to filter wines. Your Pinot Noir, your Cabernets, the high solid red wines, that's where the Bucher system really shines, because we have that unique system with the back flush and low pressure. There are some options you can get. These are not standard, but we can certainly quote you on a conductivity probe. This would check for any chemicals after your cleaning cycles to make sure we're not mixing caustic with your wine. You can do nitrogen injection. There's an option if you want to degas your wine. Please note, this is different from, we push the wine with nitrogen. So we're never going to oxidize your wine. This is not a standard feature. This is part of the system, is that we are going to push the wine with nitrogen at the end. This option here is just for degassing. We have the opportunity to use bentonite. It is not your standard bentonite. It has to be ultra filter bentonite. So this is a silica-free bentonite, but this is a unique feature that allows you to process wines that have been treated with bentonite fining. You can also have an option of adding injection of other enological products, such as SO2, CMC, or gum arabic. So there are some features for adding post-filtration injection. And they have a tank management system. This is an opportunity if you want to add multiple inlets or multiple outlets. You program it so that you can set to run a certain amount of gallons from one tank, send it to another tank. It's a very nice feature. They have what's called the tandem concept. So think of the juice lees process that I spoke of earlier with that 3mm capillary straw. We can use those modules to process the retentate from your Crossflow filter. So what some customers have done, they purchase a smaller Crossflow filter outfitted with those 3mm modules, and they use that just to process the retentate from the larger filter. It's a really interesting opportunity to minimize your wine losses even more. And there's an opportunity to use your phone from your home, from your office, from your laptop. They have this WineAct mobile application that is available on some of their models. So those are some options. In terms of a final summary here, the smallest filter Bucher offers is an FX2. Model FX2 will do about 200 to 600 gallons an hour. If it's a clean Sauvignon Blanc, you're looking at the 600 gallon an hour rate. If it's a high solids red wine, it would be closer to 200. The largest filter Bucher makes is the FX300. This is a 3-skid system, and that will do anywhere from 3,000 to 9,000 gallons an hour. We have a couple of customers that use this. Obviously, this is for very large producers. We have a number of models in between the FX2 and the FX300. So just to give you a scope, here's the smallest filter, here's the largest. The FX2, the pricing on that starts at $75,000, depending on the options, and it can be a bit higher than that. We are not the cheapest filter on the market, and we know that there are competitors that have cheaper units out there. However, when you look at the wine quality benefits that you get with Bucher, the automation, very easy to use. No one is going to protect the wine quality better than the Bucher system. That's why we have been extremely popular with high-end wineries, those customers where the quality of the wine is just paramount. As I talked about before, it's very easy to do Crossflow on wines that are easy to filter. Where the Bucher system stands out is on those difficult to filter wines. As a result, Gusmer and Bucher, we have over 100 different filters throughout the United States. Many of our customers have purchased numerous filters from us over the years. So definitely proven in the industry. So please reach out to myself, Calvin, or your Gusmer technical sales rep, and we can get you in touch with some of those references. So what I would like to do right now is invite Chris Bertsche on the line, and there we go. Welcome, Chris.
So I am the winemaker at Coelho, and what we were doing prior to Crossflow is we were hiring out our Crossflow filtration. And I'm sorry, I should back up. If you don't know, we're in Oregon, and I would say in Oregon we don't have a lot of opportunities to hire out your Crossflow, and if they do, they have pretty small units. 2 to 3 modules that can maybe do 300-400 gallons an hour, and we have a lot of clients at our winery where we're filtering 12 to 20,000 gallons at a time, and that would literally take about a week for that to happen. And with these small units, we were seeing a lot of problems with broken straws, broken membranes, and if something like that happens, you start bottling, wine on like a 9,000 case bottling run, and you start clogging the filters within, a couple hundred cases. That's kind of a huge problem. So we decided to bring that in-house, and, through our searches for filters, we found the Bucher system, and it's worked great for us. Awesome.
Awesome. And Chris, how long have you been using the Bucher system?
We got it in 2018.
Awesome. Okay, so you've had a couple of years. And
yeah.
As if you mentioned this and I misheard, but what are just some of the features that what do you like most about Crossflow and the Bucher system right now?
Oh, well, I mean, it's the ease of use, quite honestly. I mean, with other systems that we've used here, and, we've rented from, other companies, that it's just the automation is such a time saver. I mean, I don't know if any of you've, washed a Crossflow and you have to turn this valve on, turn that valve on, let it wash for a certain amount of time. And, there's really no barometer to see if it's clean. Whereas the Bucher system, it gives you a kind of a cleaning, readout when it's done. So you actually have, a metric to gauge your cleanliness of the system, because it has its pressure differential and its delta P, where you can compare that through all your wash cycles. So you can say, oh, okay, maybe I need to wash this a little longer. I need to do a long wash, a short wash, and stuff like that. So there's actually a metric to see how clean your filter is as well. And that's a that's a big thing, because you could wash, a manual system for 4 or 5 hours. Well, how do you know if you have it clean? Because it'll look great when you first start it up. The wine's going through there, very well, but it's going to clog up within an hour. So, you've done all that work, wasted all that water and caustic and material for, a whole lot of nothing, really.
Yeah. So you talk about the efficiency. Can you talk a little bit just strictly about wine quality? What do you find about the wine coming off the filter?
Oh, I mean, it's just, when it comes off the filter, it just gives it that last little bit of polish before bottling. It's just beautiful because, like you've said before, it doesn't really take color out. It just cleans it, polishes it, makes it, a beautiful product for bottling.
Awesome. Okay, very good.
Crystal clear.
I know I talked about the juice lease system, and you actually do have the juice lease system. Can you talk a little bit about that, how you operate it, and what are your comments?
We do. So the juice lease is a very curious thing, because it's really a recovery system for, we make a lot of rosé up here in Oregon. We do about 15,000 cases. So, if you can imagine, it's about, 300 tons of fruit. And by the time you press the life out of it, you have a lot of pulp, especially with Pinot Noir. And, if you do your finding and, you're racking it off, in the end, you have about 3,000 gallons of, lees that you usually throw down the drain. And with this juice lease system, we've been able to recover about 70 to 80% of it. And, if you just do the math on that, I mean, that's about 2,100 gallons of juice. Now you can add back to the ferment, ferment separately, but case wise, you're looking about another 800 cases, and the 800 cases adds up real quick from year to year.
Definitely.
And it's essentially paid for itself in about a year and a half. So it may look like a big investment, but it is a good product to have.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Um, you've talked about this in some of our customer videos that we have on our website, but I'm really interested to hear, Chris, you talk about we've talked about this, you and I, the environmental social governance, the ESG program. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, we could do a whole webinar about that, but so what we do in Oregon, there's this big push for, organic sustainability in the vineyards, and the wineries really kind of, or inside the winery, I should say, really doesn't get that much, time, or it's really not in the front of the conversation. But if we can be sustainable in things in our vineyards, why can't we be sustainable in the winery? And I just see so much inefficiency on the winery side versus the vineyard side. And for us, what that means is, using less water, one step, less electricity, because all those things add up. And it's kind of like that hidden thing that you really don't see or no one really talks about as well. It's kind of a broad generalization, but it's like for us, like what can we do to make our business more efficient while helping the environment as well? And that's kind of what governs us. If we can use less cleaning product, less water, use our time more efficiently, we're using less power and all those things as well. So, it's a very small thing, but it adds up in the end.
Interesting. Okay. You talked about how you do have experience with Crossflow, and so you knew it going into it. Were there any pleasant surprises once you owned your own unit? What did you find really most valuable, and say, hey, I'm really glad I got this. I didn't think about this prior to purchasing.
Well, just the time savings, really. I mean, we're a pretty small winery. We have myself and the owner who pretty much do all the work, and we crank out about 100,000 cases a year. So we're pretty busy all the time. So it's really beneficial for all of us, to be able to, set up multiple tanks, because you can really program this unit to, do multiple filtrations like throughout the week, and you really don't have to touch it at all. I mean, just have your hoses hooked up, maybe move the hoses from tank to tank, and that's about it. I mean, it's pretty amazing how much time it saves.
Awesome. Okay. Chris, we have a lot of people that are on this call who are looking to purchase a Crossflow filter. So they're in the market. They may be new to Crossflow filtration. What words of advice, suggestions would you offer those people?
Oh, I would say whatever unit you're looking at, go one size bigger. Because, I mean, we have a 6, and at the time we purchased it, we're like, man, this thing's going to be way too big. But in the end, it may be a little big, but you can always grow into it. Because if you buy the right size system for today and you grow it all, I mean, the system's fast enough where, if you get a week ahead of yourself with like filtering and bottling, but if you have that one problem, then you can really be behind, and it really throws off your bottling schedule. So that would be my recommendation. If you're looking at a 3, I don't know if they make a 4, but get a 4. Just that extra capacity, creates a lot of, time savings in the end.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, good. You got time for some questions, Chris?
Oh, absolutely.
Terrific. Calvin, I thought we could open it up if you want to chime in here and take yourself off mute and chime in with any questions.
Hi, Dave. Yes, we do have a few questions here. First one is, what would be the minimum volume needed to make setting up and running the Crossflow effective?
Well, I mean, we have a 6 module. So, I mean, the system holds about 130 gallons to start with. So my personal minimum is 600 gallons because it'll take about 20 minutes.
Yeah. And you have
but
6, Chris, so that sounds about right. I know for some smaller units, like a 2 or a 3, we have found 200 gallons seems to be the magic number. You can get it with a bit smaller than that. That certainly does not the volume needed to fill the machine, but we have found if it's under 200, you probably want to use different methods.
Benoit here, if I may. Yeah, you can filter less, but then your losses, your percentage of losses will be too big. So you have a minimum volumes that you're going to lose. So if you're trying to do a really small volumes, and your percentage of loss is going to be the same as if you're trying to do a really big volume. So it's difficult to say exactly what is the minimum, but if you just do enough to fill up the filters, and you might lose 50% of your wine in return because you can't filter everything.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Benoit. Kevin, any other questions?
Yeah, next one is, are we understanding correctly that you can filter juice solids as well as wine saturated with yeast?
Benoit, you want to chime in on that?
Well, it depends what we call wine saturated with yeast. If it's immediately after filtration, I would say no. I would say we need to, because we cannot filter the lees from filtration. So we do juice lees, and then we do some barrel lees, but we cannot do the thick lees that you get after the filtration. So if we're talking about filtering a wine that just finishes fermentation 2 days ago and it's still full of yeast, that might be some issues. It might work in some cases and it might not in some. So it's better to let it settle for a few days, do a first rack, and then filter it.
If you use the juice lees, are you specifically talking about the juice lees membranes? Because they would handle that as long as you're not over like 10% solids.
Yeah, it works in some cases, and then it really depends of what did you add during your filtration and how much lees you have. So there's a lot, and what kind of fermentation do you do? So there's a lot of parameters. It will work in some case, but not all of them.
Awesome. I have a really interesting question here. Can I do meads with the filter? We back sweeten with honey and then final filter. Will the honey cause a problem?
Benoit, we'll let you tackle that one.
Thanks, Dave. I don't have a lot of experience with mead wine, and to be honest, I can't really answer that. I guess it depends on the honey, and but I don't really have any experience with mead wine.
Yeah, I don't think we have anyone in the States, Calvin, who's done the cross flow on mead per se. It's come up in the past, but yeah, we don't have any experience either.
I mean, I would think it would be okay. I mean, it really kind of depends on the turbidity of the wine. And because I mean, we've done, sweeter rosés and Pinot Gris and things like that have had, 20, 30 grams of RS in them, and they've gone through just fine. And even if we've, stirred the tanks and whatnot, you're looking at, 200-300 NTUs, and I mean, that our flav goes through it no problem.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know anything.
It takes a little longer with a little more back flushing, but
I would say yes, but it would depend on the type of honey and how much honey there is, and I don't know anything about honey once it's dissolved, how much solid there is. I love honey, but I don't know too much about it.
Okay, thanks, Benoit.
Hi, Dave. Next question is, what is the main cause of membrane breakage?
Well, membrane breakage, it can be difference of water temp. So if we go too cold to too hot and too hot to too cold, that can break the membrane. And for the filters, we have some safety with that. We go from cold to warm to hot, and then same on the way back. We are really careful. And then we have a temperature probe that makes sure we don't have the water, that the water is not too hot. It can be also some issues with the difference of pressure, getting too high in pressure or too low in pressure too fast. And same that is managed by the filter. And then it can be some bad design filter with the circulation is not correct in the filter, and the velocity in the membrane, around the membrane, can create some breakage. But with all the new line of filters, the FX, the X-Wine, the Extreme, we don't have any problem with membrane breakage.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see the improvement in capillary breakage over the years, as Benoit pointed out. Some of the straws could break, and there is a kit that we supply that enables you to isolate those capillaries. But as Benoit pointed out, we've seen minimal capillary breakage over recent years. Some of these design modifications have really done a nice job to improve that.
Another thing too is a beautiful option that we have on our machine is it has a turbidity meter. So it is monitored throughout the filtration. So even if there is a capillary breakage, the machine will shut down and stop.
Yeah.
And I would say 90% of other machines on the market do not have that. So, I mean,
yeah,
there's triple redundancy in the system.
It's not easy to manage the turbidity, to check the turbidity during the filtration. And,
exactly.
Because you don't want any flow. So Bucher was able to set it up so we can check the turbidity during the filtration, and it works really well.
Yeah, it works very well.
Yeah. Good comments.
Next question, Dave. What do you do with the retentate?
Well, if you have a FX2 tandem unit, you can send it to that unit. But seriously, at the very end, there is going to be very high solids retentate. We've played around, Benoit, you might want to chime in on this, but most customers really just dispose of it. There's little to gain from that retentate because it is so thick that most people just dispose of it, either dump it or throw it in the fields. There's very little benefit that we've seen from that.
Yeah, some people collect the retentate in a different tank, and then there's a market for lease, so you can sell it if you have enough. Because if you're filtering Napa Cab, at the end the retentate is still Napa Cab, and it can be sold as Napa Cab, so it has a value.
Good point.
And then, yeah, you can collect, depends on the size of your filter. If it's a big filter and you have a lot of retentate, you can try to refilter it at the end with a tandem filter like we talked before, and that will reduce your loss. But whatever filter you have, you always have you always have something left at the end that is going to be some waste.
So actually what we do is, I can chime in on that as well. So when we bottle, we usually filter about 36,000 gallons at a time. And we capture it in we have like a 500 gallon tank, stainless steel tank with a lid on it. And, you know, I can capture about 400 gallons of lees, and I change out my membranes to the juice lees membranes. And, you know, I can recapture about, 300 gallons of that 400. So, it's some time changing the membranes out, but, it is well worth it.
Awesome. Good questions.
Okay. Yeah. So, what is the micron size that the modules filter down to, and also do the modules filter juice lees and wine lees? We talked a little bit about that. So, but if you could cover it a little bit more.
Yes. So the micron rating on all of the Bucher modules is 0.2. So that is standard, whether it's juice lees or wine filtration, it is 0.2. It's interesting. Some suppliers have looked at having like a 0.45 retention. Most Crossflow is actually at 0.2. And it seems counterintuitive, but you actually get better flow rate at 0.2 than you do at 0.45, because you're flowing it across that membrane. It's as if it's 0.45, you're opening up the opportunity for things to get clogged. By tightening it up, there's less of an opportunity. So 0.2 is the micron rating, and you have to get to 0.2. It's not as if you can order modules with different ratings.
Dave, what is the availability for training from a Gusmer technician after purchasing a unit?
So we do include, in the commissioning, we have 2 crossflow operators. All they do is crossflow. So they include commissioning as part of the orientation and startup. Whenever we do maintenance, we obviously will spend a couple of hours doing training with their team. Otherwise, we can arrange to have training, if you want to do annual training, or when you do preventive maintenance, you can have our technicians come in to do that. We do have an hourly rate that we charge for that. Calvin, I believe it's, what is it, 150 an hour? So it is very reasonable.
Correct. Next question. How stringent should one be in avoiding allowing cream of tartar through the filter membranes?
Benoit, I'll let you tackle that one, please.
Yeah, well, you can't send any cream of tartar, any tartrate through the membrane. The crystal can damage the membrane. So your wine should be racked after cold stabilization. If you think you have a chance of having some crystal in your wine, if it's not correctly settled, then we can put 100 micron pre-filter at the entrance of the filter. It's a special option. And that will retain the filters, but it's not recommended to send any crystal, any tartrate crystal through the filter.
A couple more questions here. What is the ideal filtration level at bottling? Not sure what that's referring to.
Well, for me, that's really a choice of winemaking. Some people will never put a wine in bottle without cross-flow filtration or sterile filtration. And some people don't do any filtration. And I don't think there is a right answer there. I think it's really a choice of winemaking. I've done both. I've done filtration, no filtration. And if you trust your wine and trust what you've done and confident of what you put in the bottle, then the filtration is not always necessary. That's really a choice of winemaking. If you want to prevent, if you want to prevent any accident in the bottle, if you want to be totally safe, then you must filter. But it's really a winemaking choice.
I did get a clarification on that question. So yeah, the question was referring to micron rating on the bottling line.
Well, the cross-flow filter is a 0.2 micron, and what's common on bottling line is 0.45 micron. So that means the cross-flow filter is filtering stronger than the filter I usually see on bottling line.
Well, I can chime in. Most bottling trucks, only the minimum or the maximum they would give you is 10 microns. Because if you do bigger than that, it would plug up the fillers.
Yeah, I call that a fly filter.
Yeah.
And as I talked about during my presentation, we sell millipore filters, so it kind of hurts us, but our bottlers actually use less millipores as a result if the wine's cross-flow filtered. As Benoit said, because you're at 0.2, it's very, very clean wine. So if you have a 0.45 on the bottling line, you're going to get great life on that.
Yeah. Since we've had our crossflow, we haven't changed ours since we have the system.
Yeah.
That's almost 2 years now.
Good for Chris, bad for Gusmer.
Well, I bought the filter, right?
Next question, Dave. Does the high turbidity of a wine filter correlate with the cloggability of the membranes on a bottling truck? Does the same apply to NTU?
You know, if I could pass that over to Chris, do you have any comments on that?
What was that one more time?
Do you see a correlation between the NTU level and filterability?
Oh yeah, I mean, obviously it'll take more time, but you know, with the Bucher system as automated as it is, I mean, yeah, I mean, it just slows down your flow rate, but once the filter, you know, kind of finds its rhythm of like backflush and filtering and the motor speeds and everything, I mean, it's just constant. It'll just take a little longer. I mean, I've noticed like we've had Pinot Noir that's been, you know, pretty dirty and, you know, say, you know, about 200 NTUs, and, you know, I can still average flow over, you know, 12, 20,000 gallons, you know, 600 to 700 gallons an hour, it just backflushes more. The
Yeah,
system
I think
adjusts itself for flow.
there is some correlation between NTU and filterability, but
Yeah.
you can get a wine at 30 NTUs that you're gonna have a really hard time to filter, and you can have a wine at 200 or 300 NTUs that you're gonna filter really easily. So
Yeah.
getting a turbidity gives you an idea, but I've seen some wines that are totally out of that.
Yeah.
So we say that we filter at 800 NTU maximum, but yeah, it gives you an idea, but not necessarily. You have some surprise sometime with low NTU and wine to filter.
I would say, especially with Pinot Noir, because that's what we deal with a lot. And if you have a lot of beta-glucans in there, it's a problem. It really slows down your filtration.
Okay, Kevin, we got about 5 minutes left. Got time for a couple more?
Yeah, there's a couple more questions. I think I can actually field these. The questions, one more just popped in, but a couple of the questions here. Do we sell replacement filter membranes? Yes, Gusmer does sell replacement modules, both of the juice lease and the wine modules for the Bucher Cross Flow units. There's another question here if there was a price difference between those two, and I think there's slight price difference between the juice modules and the wine modules. It's about 10%. It's not a significant difference, but there is a slight price difference, yes. Question that just came in, would you filter a wine more than once, and why would you do that? When a wine backflushes multiple times, what do you do?
So if I can, you might filter your wine 2 times or maybe or more. Well, first, if you have some issues with your filtration, and also if it's recommended to filter just before bottling. So if you do filter after filtration and you put your wine in bottle several months later, then you might need to refilter it. And then the backflush, I don't really understand the backflush question. The filter is gonna automatically backflush every 10 minutes. That's the maximum time between 2 backflush. And it's gonna calculate between the difference of flow and the difference of pressure. Is going to calculate what is the best time to do the backflush. So he might do a backflush every 2 minutes if it's needed, and if there's no backflush needed, he's going to do a backflush every 10 minutes. But you must do a backflush at least every 10 minutes.
Okay, very good. Kelvin, anything else? We got maybe time for one more, or are we out?
2 minutes, yeah. One last question. What causes filters to clog on the bottling line after a wine has been filtered through a filter?
What kind of filter? And if we're talking about a cross flow, it can be I mean, I've seen it because people do a filtration and then they add some product in the wine before bottling. So then they need to refilter it. And or it can be because the wine was filtered too long ago, and or it can be because it was not filtered correctly. It can be sometimes if you have some residual sugar and your tank is not perfectly clean or whatever, your wine can restart to ferment, and then you can't filter it on the bottling line. So there's multiple reasons.
Looks like we're about to be at the end here. I'm not sure if we can fit this question in quickly. It says, what is the earliest you can filter a wine before bottling, white or red? You have about 30 seconds, Chris.
Oh, I mean, I usually do about 2-3 days before.
Excellent.
White and red. I usually filter as we're bottling because the filter can go fast enough where I usually have enough capacity built up for about a half a day. Then I turn the filter on, that way I don't have empty tanks at the end of the day. That's what I do.
Okay. We were at the top of the hour. So as I said at the start, I want to make sure we finish. Thank you for everyone's time. Benoit, for your time. Chris, thanks for participating. And thank you to all
anytime.
participants on the program. Hope it was useful.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you. And if you other questions were not answered, Calvin and I will address those. Thank you.